radars, you know, more so than the 30-year-old radars that were on the ships that we've served on. Fantail.
Russell even got to share a little bit of her experience when her dad came aboard during the Fox's last week at sea. Needless to say, he was one proud papa.
It's that gut feeling you have when the flag comes by. It's very personal, and I feel very good about it. And so does her mother.
Lieutenant Schweinfurth is hoping to make the Navy a career. Lieutenant Russell is thinking about it. But because of downsizing, the decision may be out of their hands.
I'm getting caught in the same crunch, along with a lot of the male officers on board here. Sort of scary. A year from now, I have no idea whether I'll still be in the Navy or whether I'll be out, and it will be really no choice of my own.
As we said, this was a temporary assignment for the women. They'll be returning to their former ships, non-combat ships. It won't be as exciting for them as here aboard the Fox. Stephen?
Ed, you mentioned at the top of the report that the Navy is about to put women aboard the carriers. When is that going to be done time-wise?
We don't have an exact date, Stephen, only that it will be next year. We do know that one of the ships involved is the nuclear-powered aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln. Tomorrow on 10 News at 5, we will take you aboard the Lincoln when she is at sea. Pilots and crews from North Island and Miramar on her flight deck. Now, you've seen bits and pieces of aircraft carrier takeoff and landings in a movie such as Top Gun, but tomorrow we will show you an air operation start to finish. Stephen, Carroll?
All right, thank you very much, Ed. You have permission to stand easy. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Now, tonight you're going to be as close to an air operation aboard a Navy carrier as you can possibly be without actually being strapped into the seat. This month, the 10 News crew spent a week at sea with the Navy to bring us a series of reports we call The Navy You Do Not See. You've seen bits and pieces of aircraft carrier takeoffs and landings in the past in films like Top Gun. Well, we're going to show you a carrier operation from start to finish. We join Ed Lenderman live at Miramar Naval Air Station, where planes and crews have just returned from a carrier deployment. Ed?
Hello, Stephen. That's a plane familiar to San Diegans. It's an F-14 Tomcat. It belongs to Miramar's Black Lion Squadron, and it's just back from 6 months of sea duty. The Cold War may be over, but the Middle East and other world hotspots have kept the military, the Navy and Marines in particular, very busy. This month, squadrons from Miramar and squadrons from North Island returned home after flying daily missions in the Persian Gulf and off the coast of Somalia. Tonight, a look at those squadrons in action. Call it the calm before the storm, a rare moment when the deck of an aircraft carrier is quiet. That's the nuclear-powered carrier Abraham Lincoln down there, the world's largest warship. The Lincoln's heading back to the West Coast after 6 months in the Pacific and the Persian Gulf. And that storm we mentioned, it's about to start. The launching of planes and helicopters of every size and description. F-14 Tomcats, E-2 Hawkeyes, S-3 Vikings, H-60 Seahawks. We mention them by name because the aircraft and their crews are all part of the San Diego-based squadrons from Miramar and North Island. During the Lincoln's 6-month deployment, they launched and landed aircraft 6 days a week. Now, you might think with all those operations that for the pilots and the crews here on the deck, things would get to be pretty routine. No way. It's never routine when you're launching and landing on a floating airstrip.
Once you start thinking it's routine, you start looking for trouble.
You can see why the people who do this for a living call the deck of an aircraft carrier the most dangerous 4.5 acres in the world. Lose concentration for just a second, and it could mean your life. Carrier crews have a word for this ability to focus only on the job. It's the ability to compartmentalize.
Start thinking about what's going on. Everything else is secondary at that point. And from that time till the time you land again aboard the ship, it's 100% concentration.
That concentration starts well before this well-choreographed ballet of people and planes.
Straight up, guys. Straight up. Up in the back. Lock.
With the fire crew always hovering nearby.
Hello, San Diego.
During our stay on the Lincoln, the squadrons demonstrated their strike capability. The audience? The family and friends of the crew members of the ships in the Lincoln's battle group. The civilians, the Navy calls them Tigers, joined the ships just before they left Pearl Harbor. And then the hairy stuff started. Landing, or as the Navy puts it, recovering the planes. Watching this, you get a real appreciation for the courage and discipline it takes to put an aircraft down on the deck of a moving ship. This is all the view the pilot gets as he comes around. Now, consider what it must be like to do this at night in bad weather. You never forget your first night landing on a carrier.
The first thing you say to yourself is that they don't pay you enough to do this. It's one of the stupidest things you've ever done.
There's never a moment when catastrophe isn't at the door. And sometimes she lets herself in. Early in the Lincoln's deployment, an F-14 crashed into the back of the ship during a night landing. The plane cartwheeled down the deck and into the water. The Miramar pilot died. The memory of that terrible incident will stay with this crew forever. But so will the memory of the acts of heroism on the part of the hundreds of officers and enlisted people who immediately rushed to the deck. A deck awash in flame, a deck strewn with live warheads.
You know, you have to shove your emotions aside, regroup very quickly, and just start to act. People were immediately running up on the flight deck to man fire hoses. They were getting the ordnance. They actually just shoved it all over the deck so that it wouldn't heat up and explode as well and cause more damage or possibly more loss of life. So a very trying time, but that's the kind of thing that we're all trained for.
Lieutenant Malloy told me there were some superhuman feats going on that night. You see, there were still lots of planes in the air waiting to land. 30 minutes after the crash, the Lincoln's flight deck was clear.
Ed, incredible watching up close like you did some of those landings. I understand you did a little flying yourself while you were out at sea.
We did, Carol. We flew over to the Lincoln by helicopter from the ship we were on, a guided missile cruiser. Now, I want to tell you, after spending all day on that big carrier flight deck, when we flew back to the cruiser, her flight deck looked like a postage stamp. Tomorrow, we'll be back aboard the cruiser. We'll show you more Navy history being made.
All right. Great reports, Ed. Thanks so much.
This week, during a series of reports we called The Navy You Don't See, we told you about history being made when two women serving on a Navy combat ship during a 6-month deployment. Well, that ship is the San Diego-based guided missile cruiser USS Fox. We go live to the Fox right now and join Ed Lenderman. Ed, you've got more history-making news from that ship for us.
We do, Stephen, which is one of the reasons why we chose the Fox for our Week at Sea with the Navy. 10 News joined family members and friends of the Fox's crew. We all got on board when the Fox docked at Pearl Harbor. Now, the Navy calls this a Tiger Cruise. Well, among the Tigers was an adult and a child who are very close to the Fox's captain.
It's difficult for me to express in words.
This is a father's pipe dream come true. It has been just wonderful for me.
Bob McCabe II and Bob McCabe III are talking about a week they will treasure for the rest of their lives.
That's Diamond Head ahead, you see it?
A week when 3 generations of McCabes were aboard the guided missile cruiser USS Fox. That's 9-year-old Robert IV on the bridge. What makes it even more special is the special connection McCabes 2 and 3 have with the Fox. Bob McCabe III is the Fox's captain. His dad captained the Fox in the early 70s. In the history of the U.S. Navy, the McCabes are believed to be the only father and son to ever command the same ship.
I've worked 20 years. It's kind of the stars lining up in the right way for me to be lucky enough to command this ship.
We are very close, really, and I don't see that much of him, but I can joke with him about the Navy and about ships because we talk on exactly the same wavelength in that regard, so it's good.
It's just a feeling of being able to share this with him is important to me.
The former Fox captain is very proud of the way the current Fox captain commands.
And, you know, there's some subtleties, and I think you people are seeing it. The spirit of the ship, those are things that come out, that permeate the ship. It's called morale, but you can't define it, and you see it, and that tells me an awful lot. So I'm a very proud father.
And a proud grandfather.
Well, it could be they do a lot of sailing here.
During the Tiger Cruise, Granddad was never far from Robert's side, whether along the rail.
All right, now come up and oh, I got it.
Or on the cruiser's flight deck. Robert's getting ready to take off in the helicopter, just so long as it stays tied down. You could often find all 3 McCabes on the bridge. After all, McCabe III still had a ship to bring home, after a long and often difficult deployment. 3 months in the Persian Gulf, 30 miles off the Iraqi coast, in oppressive summer heat.
The average temperature is 120, 125 degrees. These young people were at it every day, didn't give up. It was an unpleasant environment to work, and I'm just damn proud of them.
Here's one thing Commander McCabe couldn't have anticipated having to do during the Fox's deployment. telling his crew he'd just gotten word the Fox was being decommissioned.
I think the initial reaction is, well, that's it. Maybe we don't have to do all the things that we've been doing. I think it's very important that we continue right up until the day the ship is decommissioned in April, working together. Who knows? A month or two from now, the Navy may decide they need Fox and off to do something else.
And the crew responded as McCabe knew they would.
Every individual in this ship has stayed right on top.
The Fox, built in the 60s, has become a victim of military downsizing. McCabe has mixed feelings about the tremendous cuts being made. He understands that some are needed, but adds,
I have a feeling that a lot of these forces that we're doing away with now may be needed in the future. As a commanding officer of a ship, I'm very concerned that if our country has to go to war again, we'll be prepared to do that.
The Fox is scheduled to be decommissioned in April, and you can bet there won't be a dry eye in the house. This is a ship with a very, very proud tradition. As a matter of fact, during its last cruise on patrol in the Persian Gulf, the Fox was the only ship in the battle group to pick up a distress call from four Navy pilots who were down in the sea. All four were rescued. The Fox's helicopter rescued one of them.
Well, what's going to happen to the Fox, Ed? Is she going to be mothballed?
She's not going to be mothballed, Carol. She's going to be scrapped. As a matter of fact, all of the cruisers in this class are going to be decommissioned. But before this one's gone, we've got more stories for you tomorrow on 10 News at 5 and again at 6:30.
All right, Ed, we've been enjoying each and every one of them.
The Navy you don't see. All this week we have been showing you a day in the life of aboard a Navy warship when it's at sea. Ed Lenderman and a 10 News crew spent a week aboard the guided missile cruiser USS Fox. Ed joining us now with another look at the Navy you don't see.
And you know, we're still going like this.
It's a long trip.
We've shown you a lot of shipboard jobs this week, but there are a couple we haven't shown you until tonight.
these are the pictures you see in the Navy recruiting offices. Young people trained in the latest state-of-the-art electronics with big responsibilities. Tracking, weapon systems, navigation. This is the Combat Information Center of a Navy warship. If the CIC is the ship's brain, then this area, an area you don't see on the recruiting posters, is its heart. This is the engineering plant of the guided missile cruiser USS Fox, and it's about as far removed from the cool and quiet of radar screens as you can get. It's noisy, confining, and it's hot. During the Fox's summer deployment in the Persian Gulf, temperatures in some areas down here reached 140 degrees.
A lot of ice water. A lot of ice water.
But believe it or not, the people you see here want to be here.
I myself couldn't imagine ever being anything besides what I'm doing.
It's hands-on. It's a mechanical thing. I've always been interested in mechanics. And this gives me a chance to do just that.
Being responsible for the ship's power, doing a job under adverse conditions, gives the people down here a lot of pride.
In engineering, have a lot more camaraderie. The guys spend a lot of time down here. A lot of guys are on 6 and 6. 6 hours on, 6 hours off. So you end up being with the same people, you know, for, 6 months.
It's a lot like a family.
That being the case, the people working in the ship's galley have a lot in common with the engineers. They too are a tight group. They too take a lot of pride. In their case, pride in playing a large role in the ship's morale.
If we botch up on a meal, you can tell how everybody's day is going to be. If breakfast is bad, these guys' attitudes are going to be pretty bad coming through the day. If lunch is bad, their attitude after lunch is going to be pretty bad going through the day.
And they too work under adverse conditions. In the Gulf, it got pretty hot in here. And yes, it can be dangerous.
If you notice, for the last couple of days, we're rocking back and forth. And I know you guys can hear on the outside, could hear things crashing back and forth there. Because in a galley, it's hard to keep everything stationary to where it won't slip or slide.
Have you ever tried preparing food on a rolling ship?
Like with him slicing the turkey there. If the ship's really rocking back and forth heavy, you're going to have to plan it some way to keep that board from moving too much, or else he's going to lose some fingers.
And there's one